So we just got some new information on the recent delay of Cyberpunk 2077 by CD Projekt Red. So now much of this information is coming from a reported conference call that was held after the announcement of the delay. And an important disclaimer on this, nearly all of the information we have right now is coming from one singular source, and technically it's not even CD Projekt, but rather from a Polish-based market website, which as far as investor call goes, seems like it would be a safe place to actually find out this information, but is worth noting this is coming second hand. As far as I could tell after a lot of searching, there's just a bunch of people reposting this article or even taking it a step further and just reposting this tweet, not even going to the original article, but I couldn't find the actual conference itself. Nonetheless, there's quite a few interesting insights from this, and actually one that isn't from this, but I figured I'd highlight anyway. Yesterday on their website, they did post a report kind of geared toward shareholders. Doesn't reveal a ton of new things, but they do mention that the cause of the delay is numerous console releases, which we've heard, of course, and how the testing process for these must be done physically by a dispersed dev team. So we got a snippet there, but the much larger portion of news comes from this conference call. So one of the first things we have from this is that they reaffirm that the November 19th release date is and was possible. And that is a direct quote, going on to say that the delay gives them the opportunity to fix this and that. And really one of the big reasons seems to be that they recognize the initial impression for the game is crucial and can be critical for more sales long term. This is why we're delaying. We don't have to, but having this extra time gives us more certainty that everything will be in the game when we release, which that in and of itself is actually a pretty interesting quote, but we'll revisit it in a moment. But really overall, it seems like without a delay, they definitely had some concerns that at least one version of the game could have some issues, and in turn that impacts sales overall because they know that first impression is critical for sales long term, or even sales in the short term when much of the sales would be coming for a game like this. But then we get the big quote that is getting posted around everywhere, which is kind of weird in that it's not actually a full quote. The first part is a quote with the situation is different, but the rest seems to be a paraphrasing of what is from the conference call. So I thought it was important to point that out in case tomorrow we see CD Projekt Red come out and say, hey, I didn't actually say that, they're paraphrasing it wrong. But here it is listed how the situation is different. Compared to previous changes to the deadline, the game for PC is ready and plays well on next-gen consoles, and the company is finalizing the process concerning current-gen consoles, which this heavily implies that the reason we are getting a delay is it's not currently ready or functioning up to their standards on current gen, while next gen seems to be mostly okay. And I think this actually could make a lot of sense with everything else we know, and even what's said here. We were 24 days from release when this delay went live, and at that point we had seen literally zero gameplay on current gen systems, which is kind of a big deal in that there are many people, probably millions of people, who would be playing this on current gen. So in some regard, many of those people had literally not seen what the game would look like on their preferred platform yet, which is something they did say in the past they would be doing. But even further, if we return to that above quote, that is very interesting, how this delay gives them extra time and more certainty that everything will be in the game when we release. Does that mean that they were running into issues from a technical standpoint on current gen? Like they perhaps literally couldn't get certain aspects of the game working on an Xbox One, and certain features were literally getting cut? CD Projekt Red has definitely cut things in the past. It's kind of popped up as a controversy at many points, one of the downsides of showing off gameplay several years before eventual release. But to me, that actually could make a lot of sense from a delay standpoint. You're 24 days out from release. You're realizing, there's no way we have enough time to get this feature working on Xbox One. That'd be a very bad headline, finding out certain features had to be cut from the past gen console versions, and perhaps this 21 days actually is enough time to fix this. So of course, immediately people are pretty upset about this. If I have a PC or even a next-gen console, why do I have to wait for these past-gen console users? One big reason could be contracts. There could be deals signed with both Sony and Microsoft where CD Projekt is affirming they will release on next-gen and current-gen at the same time. Later in this article, it does describe how CD Projekt cites how they'll have no penalties from partners because of this delay. That doesn't necessarily confirm anything one way or the other, but perhaps there would be penalties if they didn't release on current and next-gen at the same time. That's pure speculation. We don't really have much to back that up, but it is something to keep in mind. Alternatively, it could just simply be to maximize sales. If current gen users had to wait, it could hurt sales in a couple of ways. One, perhaps they see the full game, watch a ton of streamers play it for a couple of weeks, and then realize, hey, I don't actually need to play this myself. They don't buy into that initial hype like many of us fall into with new game releases. Or even some others saying, hey, I'm gonna wait until I get a next gen console, perhaps next year or down the line at some point. Later later in this, CD Projekt does confirm they don't expect major pre-order cancellations as a result of the delay. So it could just be this was a calculated cost, and they realized that it would make more sense financially as a publicly traded company to have a joint release on all platforms at the same time than to have a segmented release on next gen first and then current gen later. And from a financial perspective, I actually think that makes a lot of sense, as disappointing as it is for many of us who are on next gen or PC. But this all does serve to kind of continue my concern around current gen and Cyberpunk. I've mentioned this in videos past, but more or less there is a situation now where this game is still only 40 or so days from release, and many of us have not actually seen it how we'll play it. If you're on an Xbox One or Xbox One X, you haven't seen gameplay that is representative of your version of the game. This is natural, many games do this. We are seeing marketing material at 4K with RTX on that looks phenomenal. I know though, CD Projekt has confirmed we'll be seeing gameplay at some point that shows off how this game will look on current gen consoles. That still is definitely concerning. We have this massive amount of hype, but again, we're not necessarily seeing how we'll play. I have to imagine most PC users aren't playing at 1440p or 4K with RTX on. And the same goes for console users. You're going to be playing either on next gen or current gen, and even next gen doesn't have that big patch yet, which is reportedly coming at some point in 2021. It'll still look better than current gen on next gen, but I definitely have my doubts it'll look this good, because CD Projekt is probably doing as much as they can to make the game look phenomenal in trailers. That's not to say it's misleading consumers, but it's probably top tier, some very high-end systems. Those were all concerns I already had, but then when you add on top that seemingly this delay is due to current gen and getting things working properly on current gen, that definitely gets me a little bit more curious and a bit more concerned about what the gameplay will eventually look like when we see it of current gen. And this is definitely one of those things that could end up being nothing. Like obviously the gameplay probably won't look this good because that's just unrealistic from an Xbox One, but we may all see the current gen gameplay and be like, oh, that actually still looks like a phenomenally fun game, which is what I think will probably end up happening. But again, we just have some questions around this, and this most recent press release definitely raises more. With that said, during this conference call, CD Projekt did reiterate numerous times how they are super happy with their product and think everyone will understand once they have it in their hands. But a few final tidbits that were from this that I found pretty interesting. Apparently CD Projekt plans some organizational changes in technical departments as too many things were put together at late stages. That's pretty interesting, and it could be very revealing. I think that is exactly what many people were thinking was the problem. Somewhere at some point along the line, people are setting the wrong expectations, whether that be upper management as in the literal CEO or CFO, or perhaps just middle management, those in charge of getting things working on current gen, just not actually communicating well enough that, hey, we got some problems here. But if that is one of the core problems here, it is good to see that they do have plans to address this in the future. They do confirm that the marketing campaign will be rescheduled somewhat as a result of the delay. I am still pretty curious to see what exactly comes next from Night City Wire and all the other marketing materials. Two of the big things we still haven't seen are, of course, current gen gameplay, but even further, the character builder. We of course had that one screenshot or image of it briefly from the most recent gameplays, but a more in-depth look at the updated character builder could be interesting, and I know a lot of people want to see that. And one final thing, they do list here how there is no impact on extensions. I don't know if this means actual expansions and it's just kind of a translation error. I'm not translating this with Google Translate, it is an English article, but I figured I'd add this towards the end of this one in case you did miss it. One of the other things to come up from this delay is actually several developers or employees at CD Projekt Red coming forward voicing issues with just the backlash, whether that be in the form of death threats reported and actually being shown, or even just in general community toxicity towards those developers or employees. And for me, I just find this ridiculous. I never understood stuff like this. It's a video game. There's not other video games you could possibly play, like, oh, God forbid you have to wait an extra 21 days. It of course is frustrating that we have to wait a bit longer, but at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal. It's a video game. We're going to have it in our hands eventually. You could definitely have some serious concerns with CD Projekt overall around their communication and the numerous delays that have happened, seeming to reflect some kind of issue at some point, but targeting developers or even community managers is going to be one of the most inefficient ways to actually convey that concern or disappointment. I don't think the senior quest designer is the reason that the console versions of the game aren't finished yet. That probably isn't how this is working. But overall with this one, I know there's going to probably be some mixed mixed reactions towards this again. It'll be interesting to see and watch how the story continues to evolve as more information comes out. Was there ever actual plans to cut features on consoles or kind of limit them to future updates or patches once they were working? Or will we actually see console versions of this game that have a few things missing? Technically here, it's not confirmed. If anything, it seems like it's confirmed the other way, where this delay is helping them make sure consoles will function properly. But what do you guys think? How do you feel about this delay overall? Are you angry or disappointed? Or are you just kind of like me, where it's like, it's a video game, there's going to be a lot of other video games, I'll survive the extra 21 days. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. Hopefully you found this one informative, but until next time, I hope to see you all later.